Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. Russian mercenary group troops have pulled out of the city of Rostov. It's after their leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, ordered his fighters to turn back from Moscow to avoid bloodshed. They were on their way to the city to remove Russian commanders Prigozhin blames for mishandling the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin says a criminal case against him will be dropped. As it's reported, he will move to Belarus under a deal arranged by Belarus's president. We can now listen to the moment that Prigozhin updated his troops.
ЧВК «Вагнер» хотели расформировать.
They wanted Wagner Group to be dismissed. On June the 23rd, we went out for the March of Justice. Over the last 24 hours, we have advanced short of 200 kilometres to Moscow. We didn't spill a drop of blood of our fighters on the way. Now, it's a moment when blood could be spilled. We understand the responsibility for Russian blood could possibly be spilled on each side. That is why we are turning our columns and heading back to our summer camps, as it was planned.
Well, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says the rebellion exposed complete chaos in the country.
Today is a day when there definitely should not be silence, and we definitely need leadership. Today, the world saw that the bosses of Russia do not control anything. Nothing at all. Complete chaos. Complete absence of any predictability. And it is happening on Russian territory, which is fully loaded with weapons.
In other news tonight, police in Canada are taking initial steps to assess whether they will launch a full criminal investigation into the Titan submersible. If you're watching on television, you can now see live pictures of St John's Harbour. That's where the investigation is currently taking place. It's on the Polar Prince vessel that arrived back at the harbour earlier today. Well, the Transportation Safety Board of Canada is interviewing those who were on board the ship, which lost contact with the Titan. Inspectors said the investigation could take up to 2 years. The Princess of Wales has gone up against tennis champion Roger Federer. On a visit to a London tennis centre, Kate took part in a doubles rally with the 20-time men's singles Grand Slam winner. They were visiting a training session for some of the young hopefuls aiming to be chosen for the around 250 ball boy and girl roles during the Wimbledon Championships next month. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn, this is GB News. Now, time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Sunday's papers, with me, Andrew Doyle, and my delightful comedian panel made up tonight of Steve N. Allen and Headliners first-timer Nicholas DeSanto. Welcome to the show, Nicholas.
Thank you.
How are you feeling about it?
Very excited. I was a bit worried because, according to Greta Thunberg, the world had to end maybe potentially 5 days ago. So when Martin called me and said, "Can you do 24th?" I was not sure.
You didn't think it was going to happen because, like Mother Shipton, she's always right.
Tell me about it.
Absolutely. Steve, how are you feeling today?
I didn't think the world. Well, I thought the world was going to end in 2012 when the Mayans predicted it. So since then, I've really had not a lot in.
Everything that we're experiencing now is a bonus, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, we're going to start by having a look at the front pages for Sunday. So the Mail on Sunday is leading with, "Did Putin bribe coup leader to quit Russia?" Sunday Telegraph has Wagner mutineers turned back after striking deal with Putin. The Express has Russia on the brink. You can see a real theme emerging here on the front covers. Sunday's Mirror, Putin pushed to the brink. And the Sunday Times has Putin humiliated by mutiny. And the Daily Star is also running with the Russia story, Putin the Bootin. And those were your front pages. Right, so it's one of those days where most of the front covers are doing the same story. It is, of course, Russia. We're going to start with the Mail on Sunday. Steve, you've been looking at this one.
Yeah, as you say, they all have these headlines about mutineers turning back after striking a deal. So this deal includes your main leader heading to Belarus. It's been agreed by the Belarusian president, and also the people, the forces, these mercenaries, avoiding. I mean, it says in the thing, like, legal ramifications.
Right.
Being killed, I imagine, would have been the legal ramification.
You would have thought that, you know, with a kind of tyrant like Putin, that would probably be the result of that. So wait, Prigozhin is being sent to Belarus. Is that as part of the deal?
So that he doesn't have to face any criminal actions for what happened today. I mean, it's been an interesting short spell. I mean, this is part of why this has been an interesting day. So it took this Wagner group 7 months to take over the one military win in Ukraine, and yet within a few hours they started to make some good headway into Russia. This is going to play really badly for the morale of the Russian soldiers. I mean, good it's going to do this, but the Russian soldiers, imagine finding out this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting one, isn't it, Nicholas? Because, you know, ultimately we have this situation where, well, this is good for Ukraine, isn't it? Because you've got Prigozhin, you've got the mercenaries turning on other Russians. And my understanding is that that this Prigozhin's beef wasn't with Putin, it was with the military leaders and the way that the war was being run, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He was very heavily criticizing the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Minister of Defense, Shoigu.
Yes.
He said actually his declared aim and his convoy marching towards, advancing towards Moscow was to get those people in the Russian MOD and punish them, because they had been complaining for a long time that they had a hard time in Ukraine because they were not properly supported in terms of ammunition, and they even accused the Russian Ministry of Defense of bombarding their forces.
Right, but it does, I mean, it just reminds you never to trust mercenaries, right?
Yeah, it feels like you shouldn't be surprised if they're not loyal, because there should be a word to describe someone who's mercenary. Oh, wait a minute, it was on his business card all along.
It was obviously going to go badly, but we're going to move on to another story, sticking with Russia, though. So on the front cover of the Sunday Express, Nick, what are they going with?
We've got a beautiful image of Princess of Wales playing tennis
nothing
against
to do with Russia. She's not involved. She's not one of the mercenaries.
No, but
we should
understandably,
yes.
in a Russia-heavy day, they've gone visually with that picture.
Yes.
And we just heard about it in the news. But Russia on the brink. Obviously, we heard it's a humiliating move. It's been a humiliating 24 hours for the Russian president. And of course, now Western media are speculating about dissent, which is to be taken with a pinch of salt.
Is it? You don't think his time is... I mean, this kind of thing does shake his authority somewhat, doesn't it? Because the whole thing about Putin's shtick is that he's the big man. He wrestles with bears. You know, he can't be outgunned. But this looks kind of bad for him, doesn't it?
But can he not, as I was saying, blame it on the Ministry of Defense? Because Prigozhin was very careful not to accuse Putin himself. And ultimately, he might have been persuaded by the Belarusian president to leave because he realized that Putin came out and called it a stab in the back.
Yes.
So ultimately, Putin can say, you know, it was beef between Wagner and the Ministry of Defense, and he played the super partes.
So does Putin still have the confidence of the Ministry of Defense? I mean, this is the thing, like all leaders need to have their army on their side, don't they?
Yeah, and to look powerful and strong, especially when you are a strongman leader. And I think one of the problems that won't be addressed here is that on the Wagner Telegram group, I don't fully understand how one can access these things, but Prigozhin was saying, you've been lied to. This is not a war that was done in defence. Ukraine were not about to attack us. So the fact that then the deal is he just goes to another country and kind of cracks on with his life, it makes Putin look weak. It makes his accusations look true.
My understanding is that message from Prigozhin didn't just go out on Telegram, it was out on Russian state media as well. So these people now, the Russians are for the first time hearing this idea, because they must have been getting just, let's put it mildly, one side of the story from Russian state media. Now the idea that the invasion of Ukraine wasn't necessarily legitimate. And this does shake things up for Putin, doesn't it?
Yeah, but to what extent? Not to the extent that the Westerners want, who want Putin gone tomorrow.
They want him gone, right,
Yeah, as if then, we don't know what happens. Things might even get worse. But as you say, interestingly enough, we've seen videos of citizens of Rostov-on-Don, which is one of the two major cities that Wagner captured, actually shouting Wagner's name, presumably showing sympathy with their moves. Whether with their bravery in Ukraine or with this mutiny, we don't know, but they have had a lot of popular support.
It's all happening so fast, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it feels so like a surprise. Like 2 days ago, we were not predicting that this would be a turn in the war, which is one of the things of wars. I guess they're unpredictable, but who knows if this is going well or not? I mean, whoever replaces Putin might be worse than Putin. Is the best outcome a weakened Putin?
Good point. I don't think we should make predictions, because you and I have a bad record on predictions. I think we were both on the same programme saying that absolutely no way would Vladimir Putin invade Ukraine.
My record is immaculate.
So
my record is immaculate.
You predict as well as Greta Thunberg, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're pretty good at that.
Yeah, we both said there was no way he'd actually invade, and we were wrong on that occasion.
It's quite a big occasion, you know, I think. But, you know, we're not prophets. We don't know. So, look, we're going to move on now to the front of the Sunday Times. Steve, they are covering Russia, but they also have another story, so we should look at that, really.
Just Stop Oil fundraiser tells activists, just stop, it's not helping.
Right.
And
that's no revelation, is it?
Well, no, but it's good that the advice is being passed to Just Stop Oil, because I know Extinction Rebellion have said that they're not going to be doing those kind of protests. The problem was the media. This is my take.
You think?
Well, the problem was the fact that these original protests, the Extinction Rebellion protests, were badly aimed. Like, you want to try and get people to be more eco-friendly, I'm going to glue myself to the DLR. Makes no sense, but then the media reported it. I'm sure there have been loads of people protesting about something eco-based that no one talked about, but then this phenomena happened where if you do something outrageous, we all sit here going, I can't believe it, and everyone was talking about climate change.
Yeah, but that was the strategy, wasn't it? The idea is that, you know, if you glue yourself to a Van Gogh, everyone's going to be talking about it because it's an outrageous, infantile thing to do. But on the other hand, it doesn't endear you to the people you're trying to reach. So ultimately, it does end up being counterproductive. Like, the only way for a protest to work, yes, by all means, draw attention to yourself, but don't stop people getting to the hospital. Don't stop people getting to work on time, because they're just going to hate you. And they're not going to support your cause.
The weird thing on that, though, was there was a survey about a month ago that looked at people's opinions of this, and it meant people felt less sympathy with the group, but still felt sympathy for the cause. We started to hate the ambulance blockers, but still had high opinion of the climate issues.
Isn't that strange?
It's weird, but it kind of meant they were going to carry on doing it. Their goals were working. They didn't mind being hated as long as we actually...
But is there necessarily a causal relationship between their strategy and the increase in support. We don't really know that.
No, that's true, yeah.
What do you make of all this, Nicholas? I imagine you have lots of sympathy for these protests.
Oh, yeah, I'm all for that. Who would have thought throwing ketchup at Van Gogh or other priceless works of art wouldn't have garnered you much sympathy? But I don't think we are even that sympathetic with the whole climate change, narrative. As we speak, what are the big issues in Britain? 15-minute town segments in Oxford and Cambridge. We've got the ULEZ in London, more taxes, people forced to change their lifestyle, change their cars, get rid of their old stoves. Well, I don't think there's much sympathy for that.
Well, particularly with the net zero debates as well. Like all of these kind of environmental policies tend to affect the working class, or certainly people with less money.
Yeah.
And that's something that maybe the protesters should have taken into account. When they're blocking the DLR, it's not affecting the big cats in Tufton Street, is it?
Yeah, and that's the way that this should be done. It should be done. I have no problem with aiming for zero carbon, especially if we're going to be the country that makes all this stuff and makes some money off it. But don't tax people out of it. I think the same about cars, and we'll probably come on to talk about ULEZ later.
Yeah.
But don't tax me out of this activity. Tempt me. I'm here to be tempted.
We will be coming to ULEZ in a bit, but before we do that, let's have a look at this story, which is from the Telegraph. Nicholas, you've got this one, I think.
Oh, yeah. This is a nice story, actually. And, well, Mark Rylance, who is a 63-year-old actor, he actually played the part of a, surprise, surprise, Russian spy in one of my favorite movies, Bridge of Spies, by Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
And, well, he says... This is COVID territory, and I'm on my first appearance here, so I'm skating on thin ice. I've been
well, it depends what you say, Nicholas.
Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly.
I think just stick to the facts and we'll be grand.
Yeah, well, define facts. But anyway, so he wasn't too sure about this COVID vaccine, so he came up with his own solution, which was a garlic solution and vitamin C.
Yeah, he literally came up with his own solution.
Solution on literally and
so he was taking garlic as though COVID was some kind of vampire.
Well, he said he went grand, and he went through his play, and he was preparing Jerusalem, or acting in Jerusalem at that time, wrote another play called Dr. Semmelweis, co-authored that with playwright Stephen Brown, and
he didn't have any trouble with COVID.
No, he had no trouble, and he was a 63-year-old.
So, well, here's the thing, Stephen, because we have these debates when it comes to things like homeopathy and everything. I take this remedy, and I've never had any trouble, and therefore the remedy works.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental error, isn't it?
Oh, huge. It's best case scenario, one data point.
Right, OK.
There's no double-blind testing here at all, is there? It's just like one person. It's like those stories of some 113-year-old in a care home saying, I smoke every day. Yeah, but we know smoking will kill in general.
Yes.
So just finding one anecdotal piece of evidence.
He might be onto something. I mean, among Shakespearean actors who've taken a garlic solution instead of a vaccine, it's 100% success rate. So I think that's fine, right?
It winds me up with a line in here saying science started to sound like religion, and then he says, and really, science is no different than religion.
Yeah, that was the takeaway point, though.
It's really different, though, isn't it? Science just...
Do you know what? I think we forgive him, and he's a fantastic actor.
Science that has been tried and tested, though. Can we say that?
The idea with science is that, if you get good enough at that science, you can go and replicate the paper and get the same results. Whereas I think religion just tells you believe this or you go to hell.
Right, well, these are huge...
Yeah, but was it replicated enough?
Nicholas, these are huge theological questions. We haven't got time for this. That is it for part one. But do join us in part two, when we're going to be talking about naughty schoolboys, trouble for Sunak, and the asylum seeker issue finally solved for good. Yeah, right. Catch you in two.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Sunday's newspapers. I'm your host, Andrew Doyle. I'm joined by Steve College Boy Allen and Nicholas Mamma Mia De Santo. We're going to kick off with Sunday's Telegraph with some turbulence for Rishi. Steve, you've got this one.
Rishi faces strikes during election campaign after blocking public sector pay rise. So brief recap, they've got this independent pay review body that the government had used before from such things you might have heard like, oh, we can't possibly pay more than the independent body review has come up with. And also, my favourite classic, well, the independent body has said that we MP should get an 11% pay rise. Who are we to argue? Now they say, we can't give the pay rise that these independent people have...
What did they have? I mean, you're talking about 6% for millions of public sector workers, but they don't have a case, you know, that they don't really have the money.
Well, the main argument they use, though, is that this will lock in inflation.
Right.
And we hear that and just go, oh, yeah, fair enough. I think there's some questions to be asked in that, because everyone presumes inflation works like this. You pay someone more, if a shop worker gets paid more, the shop charges more, things are more expensive, that's inflation.
Yes.
If you pay a nurse more, you can't increase the price of anything. The only thing you could do is increase tax, which means people have less disposable income to spend, which is the goal of increasing interest rates to slow down the economy to fight inflation.
Is this right, Nicholas? So the RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch here, he's quoted as saying that the best way to tackle inflation is to deal with cost of living crises by raising wages for workers in the public sector, price controls on essential goods, and a substantial windfall tax on big business profits.
Well, I don't think I agree. As a non-public sector worker and as a mortgage holder who's just been hit by the news we've been covering earlier this week, the whole idea of the whole declared aim of raising the interest rate, which has been a catastrophe for mortgage holders, was to control inflation. Obviously, if you pay the nurse or whoever, the market will know there's more money in the marketplace, and inflation will go up. So the government, not that I have sympathies with them, but they are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
But that's the bit I don't fully get your link there. The market will know there's more money.
Yeah.
How does that work? This is just nurses having a bit more to spend. You think that their extra spending would push up the price of absolutely everything?
Well, anybody. It's not just the nurses, but as long as anybody has more money, that's the definition of inflation.
You don't think, though, that nurses deserve a bit more? I mean, they work very hard, don't they?
Well,
they've not kept
up with... when they are doing those Titanic with choreographed dances, but let's not go there.
Their pay's not kept up with inflation for 10 years.
But no, who have you as a comedian had your pay
down? But that's because jokes.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
that's
don't be so hard on yourself.
Comedians generally are getting a hard deal there. Listen, we're going to move on to Sunday's Independent now. And how do we solve tricky asylum decisions? Well, according to the Home Office, we just don't think about it. Nicholas.
I love this story. Independent says Home Office stops units making asylum decisions to prepare for small boats bill despite huge backlog.
Okay, talk us through this.
Now, this story, I like it because it's winding up all the right people.
Okay.
But I'm not too optimistic because we know how Tories have been dealing with immigration over the past 13 years. But the bottom line is that this small boats bill, or officially illegal migration bill, is something which has to be discussed in the parliament yet. And of course, it's going to face most probably all sorts of protests from and objections and, you know, obstacles from the usual suspects, the courts, NGOs, activists profiteering from illegal immigration. But already the government, assuming that this is going to work, they have dedicated their personnel, part of their personnel, which were supposed to deal with asylum cases.
Yes.
Where there's a huge backlog already, to this new law, which is aimed at, according to Independent, sending the arrivals by boat immediately back, regardless of their asylum status or claims.
Yeah, but it's more than that, isn't it? It's also the terminology that's going to be used about all these people. So everyone who comes in is going to be referred to as illegal
via the boats, which is who they are. Because let's face it, if you're leaving France to come to the UK. As comics, we've all heard this joke, and I'm, as a bit of a Francophile, I am a bit, or Francophile in English, Francophile, I'm sick and tired of this joke that if these migrants have left France for the UK, how terrible France must be as a country.
Yeah.
And there's truth to the joke, because if you're really fleeing for your life and you've gone through all, as Italian-born person that I am, you've gone through Italy, you've gone through Austria or Switzerland, Germany, France, Belgium, to come to the UK, it's not because your life was in danger, you're just coming as an economic migrant.
Okay, Steve, do you want to address that point? Is it possible to be an asylum seeker on one of these boats, having travelled through, as Nicholas says, all of these various other countries?
As soon as you are an asylum seeker, then technically you're not an illegal migrant. That's the
question I'm asking, because as an asylum seeker, aren't you meant to seek asylum in the first country that you come to? Is that not how it works?
Well, that was an argument that's used for a while, but apparently there is no...
that's international
the thing
law.
That we signed up to, there is no requirement that you have to simply be in that country.
So, but isn't it weird if you're an asylum seeker, when you say, I want to go to this particular country?
But yes, it's weird, but then that's not the question you originally started with, is can you call all of these people illegal entrants?
Yes.
You can't, because some people aren't technically illegal if they are being an asylum seeker. Then a second question is, isn't that weird?
But that's true, isn't it, Nicholas? So there's no such thing as an illegal asylum seeker.
Exactly. You can be an illegal immigrant or migrant or entrant, as the law says, or is going to say, and you can be an asylum seeker, maybe at the same time, because you enter as an illegal entrant, and then once you have applied for asylum, which they have not done and we don't know, even the BBC, where I used to work, stopped at some point calling them asylum seekers, and this is the BBC, and called them migrants, because we don't, and some of them even never bother applying for, they just disappear into the submerged economy.
Your sum of also then implies there's a group who do apply for...
Some of them might,
So they're the ones who would be called illegal, so therefore you can't say all of them are called illegal.
If you enter illegally, you are an illegal entrant. It's not an insult, it's just fact. And even
I don't think we're saying it's an insult, we're just effectively arguing over terminology.
Even within the EU, there's a Dublin Accord, where France, for example, if they go to France and if France does catch them and bother catching them, they refer them back to Italy, because they say, this is your issue. You need to, because they come to us. That's why they destroy their passports.
That's what France does, is it?
Yeah, that's
double
what
standard, Sarah, I would.
Yeah, of course. But usually they don't bother catching them because they know they're heading for Britain. They're using it as leverage against Britain.
I think we can all agree that there's been a lot of French failing when it comes to this whole situation.
Yeah. Although I think, wasn't there an article recently said that more people end up in France than try and come through to the UK?
Is that right?
Yeah, more people in Germany as well. So it's very easy to get the narrative as if somehow the largest number comes to us. It really doesn't matter unless you start having the argument about the numbers.
OK, well, next we're going to move on to The Observer. This is a story about troubled, unruly school children. Where is Lewis Schaefer tonight?
Disruptive behaviour leaves excluded pupil units in England full to bursting.
What are excluded pupils units?
So if you exclude a pupil, there's a place you can send them to for what, when you read the article, it comes across as temporary retraining. The idea is you should get someone back into the idea of school. It's not working.
In my day, that was just the rougher school down the road.
Yeah. Do you know what? I went to one of those schools.
Right, yeah.
The school where I went to, we received everyone who was excluded from all the schools around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But now, if I'm understanding this right, there are these specific places where kids are so unruly, they're so out of control, they need their own kind of prison, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's meant to be looked at as... Well, it's not meant to be looked at as a prison. It's meant to be a place where you can maybe have a bit more focused tuition to try and coach this person back into school. It's not what it is. They're already full, they're oversubscribed, and there's pressure on these places to take more people than they have places, more pupils than they have places. I wonder what will happen then.
The question I've got, Steve, though, is why are there so many pupils who are so disruptive, so unruly, that the schools can't actually deal with them? They have to move them onto these specialised units.
Two answers for you. One would be kids are worse these days, or underfunding for a decade. Your tribe will tell you which one you're meant to believe.
Could it not be a bit of both?
I mean, it could be, but your tribe will still tell you which one you're meant to believe.
I have no tribe.
No, but if you've got one...
If you've got
they'll
one...
be saying, oh, it's definitely all about underfunding. Or
Nicholas, you're one of the few right-wing comedians on the circuit, so you can tell us, what does your tribe say about the explanation for this? Do you think it's because children are generally more out of control these days?
I mean, some of them are incorrigible. They don't even recognise that some of their classmates might be cats. You know,
that's outrageous,
they have to be expelled.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that why should, and this is what the lady in question, because she was in charge of one of these PRUs, these detention or re-education facilities.
Right.
Yeah. PRU stands for Pupil Referral Units.
I mean, it sounds scary to me.
Yeah.
Pupil referral units.
And she has left that job in order to help schools actually keep these people, and the schools need to be given tools to actually re-educate them and help them within their schools rather than expelling them.
Look, I think even from the left, there's a case for saying, look, let's just reinstate discipline in schools because it's better for the kids. Because kids actually thrive when they have boundaries, right?
Well,
yeah. I don't think that's a reactionary, old-fashioned conservative position, particularly.
No, that's exactly. It doesn't have to be old-fashioned to have the idea that discipline in schools, as long as it's not ridiculous, old-fashioned, cane-related discipline.
No, I'm not saying thrash them.
Yeah, exactly. There's
Put them in an Iron Maiden or anything like that.
And that will help people learn. So it should be seen as a good. We could sell it as a good. To some trouble.
What I found shocking is that she says, I've had children spit at me, kick me and swear at me. If you haven't had that experience, this sort of behavior can be really daunting. So imagine these poor teachers, you know, we already have national TV ads trying to recruit teachers for normal schools. Never mind teachers who are supposed to be dealing with this sort of facilities.
Well, you know, when I was
Wagner's available.
When I was at school, there was one kid who used to throw chairs at the teachers and stuff like that, and we kept him. Maybe we were the school. Maybe we were the sink school.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. Making me reevaluate my childhood now.
My tribe tells you we need obligatory military service again.
There it is.
Well, I knew we'd get there eventually. OK, on to the Express now. There's controversy around ULEZ. No, that's not a slur for gay women. It's BBC shenanigans, Nicholas. What's this? You should know because you used to work at the BBC, so you can tell us.
Yeah, OK, so this is a wonderful story again, and thanks to the producers. I know it should be random, but basically we've had a BBC journalist who has turned whistleblower, and he has provided Reform UK, who happen to also have a mayoral candidate for London, with information. Let me read the title first. Whistleblower accuses BBC bosses of collusion with Sadiq Khan to silence ULEZ criticism. Essentially, BBC journalists, at least in this department, have been told that any story about malcontent or protests against ULEZ must be first approved by the highest order, highest editorial level.
ULEZ is the ultra-low emission zone, which is Sadiq Khan project.
Yeah.
The idea here that Sadiq Khan or Sadiq Khan's office has been putting pressure on the BBC and saying, look, if you're going to be critical of this, or effectively trying to ward off that kind of criticism. But what's weird about this, Steve, is, as Nicholas says, is BBC executives actually passing that on. If this is true, we should clarify, if this whistleblower is accurate, passing on that as an edict to members of the BBC saying, basically, let's be politically partisan. Is that right?
Well, I mean, you've got the full say. I used to work for the Beeb as well.
Did you?
Yeah. And I used to work on the radio in the South East, which was co-sited with BBC South East. So I know the people they're talking about in this. Actually, I've worked with Howard Cox as well before, because he used to turn up on that radio show. I did loads. And I'm no fan of the ULEZ, but I do have to say, you look at this story and realise this is just what the BBC's like. If they get complaints, then this is about getting more senior eyes looking over something.
OK.
So they're not saying the stories will be stopped, but the bosses higher up need to have a look at it because they are too worried about criticism. It shouldn't be a left or right thing. This is the same week where Clive Murray wasn't allowed to read some news because of fear of criticism from the right. This is fear of criticism.
So you don't think it's because the majority of the BBC staff are in tandem ideologically with Sadiq Khan?
Yes.
No,
Oh, well, Nicholas says yes.
But then why is there this worry of taking Clive Myrie off news when he's done Have I Got News for You? I think
you have the occasional Nicholas there.
No, but I don't think it has to... I think it's more to do with the guidelines of the BBC and them tying themselves in knots to make sure they've done compliance and all of these long things that keep them employed.
No, I agree. But what happens as a producer or former producer, you know that when they say... Because the story is true, by the way. The BBC official here hasn't denied it. They have only said that this is not a rare occasion. Right. But as a producer, you know, once they say, oh, some stories, red flag, it needs the highest level of clearance, as a producer, you just don't bother going after your big boss to bother them. Though? No, it's not your failing, because you will have another job interview within the BBC when they will ask you, okay, how many times did you refer things up to your boss? And it's not a good thing to bother your bosses, because you need to be independent. Okay, so you say, you know, you might as well not ruffle any feathers and just drop the story altogether.
Well, that's interesting. We've got insight there from a former BBC producer. Anyway, finally, Sunday's Independent. Working from home has had no impact on government productivity. What do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, the stats say working from home, no impact on government productivity, despite demands to return to office. Some people have said that this should then require some apologies for those who have been rather mean to those who work from home, which includes Jacob Rees-Mogg, admittedly a man who was photographed lying down on the benches of the House of Commons, so...
He's just having a nap.
Yeah, which people do at home. And also, Boris Johnson said that people work from home, spend all their day walking slowly to the fridge to eat cheese. The first newspaper column he did for the Saturday Daily Mail was about his recent addiction to cheese. Projection much? I think he was probably working from home, you know, too busy with cheese and affairs,
I mean,
blah, blah, blah.
it was a joke. He says working at home involves getting up, walking very slowly to the fridge, hacking off a small piece of cheese, then walking very slowly back to your laptop, and then forgetting what it was you're doing. He's joking.
It sounds like that's what he was doing when he should have been running the country. He was having to take injections to keep him off the old eat-out.
What I want to know about this is, how do they know? I mean, they're talking about how they've decided in the civil service that there's been no impact on productivity whatsoever with this kind of working half from home and half in the office. How do they know that?
Exactly. If the work result is tangible and measurable, then nobody has anything to worry about, you know, the employer and the employee. But this happens in those murky areas when, you know, a few emails are exchanged and you don't have any particular tangible product to be measured at.
I want the civil servants in work. I think they, you know, I don't like them very much, and I want them there.
The counter to that point would be there's no tangible evidence that would show that productivity has gone down, so you've failed to come up with a reason to not work from home.
Yeah, I agree.
We should do this from home. Just zoom in on our laptops. Why not? So it seems to be the trend at the moment. Anyway, look, that is all we've got time for in part 2. But coming up, we're going to be covering far-right dating, pride flag hating, and government-sanctioned masticating. You heard that right. Stick around.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness
to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Sunday's newspapers. We're going to jump back straight in with the Mail now, with an article that's clearly written by someone who's very homophobic and totally intolerant. What's this, Nicholas?
He's actually a gay man.
Outrageous. What is it?
I like this story because I'm a bit of a vexillologist, a flag enthusiast, and this article is about the evolution of the LGBT. Will I get into trouble if I don't mention QIA2S+?
You got it all there, Nicholas,
Yeah. There might be an evolution by the end of the show. It says, when I was growing up, Pride's rainbow flag was a shining beacon of tolerance, but these ugly new versions are divisive, dangerous, and deeply homophobic.
OK, now, I know a bit about this because I wrote this article. I'm not happy that it's in the show. I didn't put it in the show. The producer put it in the show. I wonder if we've got any pictures of the flags. If we have got them, we should show them. Steve, the argument I'm making in this article is that, you know, the rainbow flag meant something, like the 6-stripe rainbow thing meant about tolerance and unity, and everyone was included. You didn't need to have black and brown stripes for racial minorities. You didn't have to have intersex symbols for people born with ambiguous sex characteristics. You didn't need trans colours. That one there has got the autism symbol on that. It's a bit of a mess, is the argument here.
I really like the argument that you make that the rainbow is meant to be all-encompassing, because effectively the rainbow is shorthand for the full spectrum of light, which has all of the colours of light in it. It is indeed everything.
And there was something quite pure about that and simple, you know, that was the point.
A couple of things that, I mean, eventually, if you keep adding things to it, it ends up becoming more exclusive until eventually it will just be a flag with loads of stuff on it and a thing down the bottom saying, not you, Dave, because that's the only one who's not involved. Also, this is slightly tangential. Actually, a third point. Your tie is probably going to be the new flag. That would simplify it. I get annoyed that the people think that the rainbow has purple in it from the song. There's no purple in the rainbow.
No, it's violet.
Because purple needs to be mixed of blue and red. They're the opposite ends of the speaker.
Trust you to make this a scientific question.
Well, it just bothers me.
Well done, though, Steve. Well done. Anyway, we're going to move on. This one now is Sunday's Independent. And this is about drag queens. Drag queens, Steve, are in the press a lot at the moment. What's going on here?
They are. Well, the court issue. Federal court halts Florida's drag ban, calling it an attempt to suppress the speech rights of performers.
Can you just clarify, what was the drag ban? Because I think there's been a lot of confusion about this.
So in its current form, the idea is issues over things like Drag Queen Story Hour, I believe. And then Ron DeSantis comes up with this plan, this law to ban it, which is great. You have a law that tries to protect children. People will be in favour of this. But the judges have said that it is overbroad, which is a weird phrase, that it's too wide, that because this law with a good goal could be used to infringe the performing rights, which are effectively free speech rights. The judge makes an interesting point low down in this article, that free speech rights should be given to sexual speech that is not offensive. In the same way as to political speech or scientific speech.
But it's not a free speech violation to say that drag queens can't twerk or do highly sexualised performances around children.
So what you need is a law that bans that can't be later misinterpreted to create a restriction of their...
Is that the problem here, Nicholas, that they just haven't been clear about their legislation?
Well, quite staggeringly, the judge here, Judge Thomas Parker, has said in his explanation of the verdict that there is a distinction between sexually explicit and sexually obscene. And, interestingly enough, the lawsuit has been brought up by a hamburger chain in which they had these maybe sexually obscene but not explicit, or the other way around, performances.
Nicholas, surely sexually obscene and sexually explicit have no place in schools or around children anyway,
Yeah,
so that distinction isn't really important.
But that's what the judge is saying,
to
my surprise.
You're right, though, that shouldn't be in schools, but the law could have banned it in an eatery. The eatery says, wait a minute, I should be able to have drag queens delivering my burgers, and this law could stop me.
OK, but if there's children in the...
Exactly.
The point is this, there's children in the restaurant and they're doing sexually explicit material, then there is a reason to prohibit that, isn't there? I don't think that's a free speech issue, I really don't.
Yeah, but this might be an issue of their definition of free speech in America.
Because I think a sexually explicit drag queen has every right to do a sexually explicit show.
But not in
adults.
a hamburger restaurant where there are kids present.
I think it's kind of a no-brainer, really. Anyway, we're going to move on to Sunday Times next. And the two most problematic dating groups coming together, right-wing people and the French. Zut alors.
Well, define problematic.
Well,
you know, this is a beautiful story. Looking for Mr. Far Right, if you pardon the pun, the dating site for French patriots. So basically, it's a modern tool of getting people with similar views. And what's wrong with harmony? Far right supporters to find suitable dating matches.
Yeah, but is it actually far right? Because I read this article and I don't think the people running the website call it themselves far right. I think
they call themselves patriots.
Patriots, right?
But you have to, when you create your own profile, you have to express your political affiliation, and the ranges only are from Marine Le Pen to Eric Zemmour to another right-wing political party.
So this is interesting, Steve, because look, in recent years we've seen a lot of friends no longer be friends because of slight political disagreements. This is now quite the norm, that people will cut people out of their lives if they disagree with them. Whereas, you know, back in the day, people used to be able to disagree and have relationships and all the rest of it. So surely with these kind of relationships and marriages and dating, makes complete sense. If people just want to be around people who agree with them all the time, maybe that's what we need to do.
Yeah, and it's not as if the left's any different. We've seen the pictures on social media of people wearing the T-shirts like never snogged a Tory, which I lean to the left, but I can't statistically say, I mean, I'm sure, just numbers-wise.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do it on principle.
I must have snogged some Tories.
Yeah, but
Lib Dems mathematically couldn't have got near one.
I mean, you are bombarded by wokeism at work, at school, by the media, even in your gym, so you might as well go back home to somebody who shares your values. And another important is the great replacement theory, this, which is, by the way, a French, theorized by a French thinker. A lot of women who are on this website, unlike, you know, the feminist trend, want to have kids, want to raise a family.
And it is, you know, I think you're right that if you want someone who has similarities, that's where good relationships are formed. I do like the bit that said 58% of French would not sleep with a far-right sympathiser, which I imagine that 50 comes from the women and the 8% are the few blokes who have got to be picky. The rest of them, it's not going to put any...
You know what is the American equivalent? Passport bros. Americans who get their passports and go abroad to find women from overseas who want to raise a family.
OK, well, we're going to move on now to Sunday's Telegraph. And if you've ever wondered what the secret to losing weight is, turns out you just have to do the opposite of what the government says.
This is my favourite story. The NHS Healthy Weight Calculator got the calculation wrong and it made people fatter. It looked at your BMI, it told you how many calories you could have, and it got it so wrong.
But they had one job here.
Exactly.
Basically, which is to help you to lose weight, not to tell you to become massive heifers.
But this is so good. I wish I'd have used this website, because then the extra weight I've gained in the last few years... I'd blame... Of course I would. Whereas it's just my own fault for eating my feelings.
Could there not be lawsuits coming up?
If only I hadn't mentioned that I didn't use this website. Darn it.
Damn it.
But yeah, I mean, not only is it a perfect excuse, you shouldn't use a stupid online calculator with a BMI, which is a ridiculous thing. It's your mass divided by your height squared. It judges you as a geometric area.
Eat a bit less, right?
Everyone knows.
Or use a mirror, the traditionalist approach.
Yeah, you don't need an app. You just need a reflective surface.
Yes.
And that pretty much solves it. OK, well, look, that's all for part 3. But in the final section, we're going to be covering Magic Mike, magic mushrooms, and mundane, murderous marine mammals. Lots of alliteration there. Don't go anywhere.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant Reed, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners. It's your first look at Sunday's newspapers. We're going to jump back straight in with the Sunday Times now. There have been some very handsy audience members watching Magic Mike. Did they let you keep that thong?
It was worth every penny. Magic Mike audiences in London taking it too far, say cast members. Interesting word. The dancers have been subjected to scratching, biting, licking. 2 women a week or something have been escorted out of the venue.
Just to be clear, this is a show about male strippers, right?
This is just my last stand-up gig.
Yeah.
But also, yes, it's an interactive show about male strippers.
So you're allowed to lick them?
No, well, I think they probably need to define the level of interactivity.
Yes.
Licking is frowned upon.
OK.
It's very interactive, I suppose, isn't it? It's not meant to be hands-on. And it's because female sexuality is just not feared in the same way. If this story were there's a live interactive version of Showgirls and some bloke's having a lick, oh, this would be a different
story. Oh, it would be a very different story, wouldn't it? But is it just, like, female sexuality out of control, Nicholas? Are they just rampant?
Society has been more permissive with women who step out of the line. I think it's about time we also add a symbol on that rainbow flag for the plight of male strippers and mortgage holders.
But there's not much. I mean, Steve's got a point. There's not much threat. If I were a male stripper and some woman nibbled my calf, I wouldn't feel threatened by that.
Yeah, I mean, I have never had the fortune or the privilege of being that desirable.
Not a problem.
So you must tell them, because I can't comment on that.
Well, when you're as buff as me, this is the kind of thing. I moonlight when I do this kind of thing.
So what's moonlighting in that, sir? I don't want to know. Is that...
Is it mooning?
No. Having a second job. That's what it means.
Ah, OK.
For goodness sake. Anyway, move on now to another story. From Magic Mike to Magic Mushrooms. What's the link? Well, they both taste great. Nicholas?
Yeah, no experience there either. I'm a family guy. But the Times says magic mushroom dinner party hosts risk lengthy prison sentences. So there's this judge, I think in Scotland, Samantha Presland, who is on a crusade to raise awareness, but in a good way, because this is not a woke contest, right? But apparently this is something that has become very trendy down south in London among middle class.
Magic mushroom dinner parties.
Yes, and experimentations. And people apparently are not aware that this is a Class A drug, no less, in the same rank as cocaine and heroin. And so they risk getting hefty fines and prison sentences.
And all these heroin picnics, they're not allowed either, are they? It's a similar kind of thing.
I imagine not, yeah.
Yeah.
Having a bit of heroin with your lunch.
Yes.
And also, I didn't realise the cocaine thing. I think if you do have dinner parties with cocaine, some serious things can happen, like you could end up becoming the... Education Minister. But I'm not...
I don't know what you're saying.
I've not named which one, because there've been so many in the last 2 years.
Yes, exactly. So you're saying
that saves you with the life.
Now, the thing is, though, magic mushrooms are a Class A drug. To be fair, I didn't know that. I've never done them, and I'm not interested in doing them, but I didn't know that they were a Class A drug because they're a fungus. I assumed that it's just like having a cucumber or something like that.
Shiitake.
Shiitake, exactly. Shiitake, kind of mushroom. Yeah.
The cucumber's not a fungus as well.
No, but it's a vegetable. So my point was that I felt it was as innocuous.
Yeah, but it's got all the drugs in it, isn't it? All this, all the psychedelic drugs, which I'd love to see.
But it's natural.
Yeah,
it's nature.
But opium's natural. I can't have that with your dinner party.
Oh yeah, I'm making a defence of heroin because it's natural.
I think you're trying too hard to justify this to yourself.
OK, well, look, we're going to move on now to this story in the Daily Star. This is about mysticism.
Glasgow's mystical vibes comes from ancient ley lines, says Top Boffin. Let's look at Top Boffin. Really? A Top Boffin? Not crackpots?
Wait a minute, so doesn't the vibe just come from the music?
I think there's probably some mushrooms there. Maybe shiitake, but maybe the other ones. No, there's a ley line. It's an ancient ley line. It's a path of high mystical energy, which makes up a larger spiritual network that can be found across the world. Is it energy, though? Because there's a very strict definition of the word energy. Stop using our science words to make you woo-woo sound more impressive. Top Professor has claimed all this. This is a professor of archaeology, so thanks for chipping in on the science, saying that that's where the vibe comes from. Meanwhile, the other story about Glastonbury is that the Arctic monkeys were boring and didn't have any energy. Well,
so what is it? One or the other? Yeah. Nicholas, this is just nonsense. You don't need an expert in science to tell us.
Just as if we didn't have enough hippies at Glastonbury. I think any excuse is good for them to raise the ticket prices, which don't affect me, but...
well, ley lines can be powerful. I used to live in East Grinstead, which is apparently there's a crossing ley lines, which is why the Scientologists live there and all the sort of strange religious sects. And you definitely sensed a weirdness about the town.
Because of the ley lines or the Scientologists?
I think a bit of both. Yeah, there are lots of people walking around with sort of dead behind the eyes. You know? Anyway, let's move on to another story now.
Arctic
Before
monkeys.
we finish, we've got this one on the Mail on Sunday, and this is some bad behaviour from antisocial animals, Steve.
They're looking to find the Cumbrian Peacock Poisoner, which sounds like a Channel 5 quiz. Apparently they scratch cars, they keep locals awake with their raucous nookie, it says here. I mean,
really?
Don't we all? But one resident said, peacock porn, we call it, which just gave me a mental image of a tin of peas, and I won't go into the rest of it. But now, three have been killed, two of them by being hit by a car. Solve that mystery, and one has been poisoned.
Now, we see peacocks, they're very beautiful creatures, and we think that they're very sort of charming.
The males are.
The males are particularly, the peahens are boring, aren't they? But, you know, on the island of Sark, they used to have peacock. I've been to Sark quite a lot. They used to have peacocks there. They made so much noise that one of the locals ate them. And now they're not there anymore. Which struck me as quite an extreme response. But maybe they are that noisy and that irritating. Nicholas, what do you think about peacocks?
I don't know. I mean, in North London we have foxes. So if they're as noisy as the foxes, I'm not going to eat a fox.
No, I believe that peacocks are actually even more noisy. But this article is saying that they're not even... They're vandals. They don't just screech and everything else. They actually...
Jump on your car and...
They jump on the car.
Yeah. But they do look good, don't they? To be fair.
They're more a decoration, aren't they?
Yeah. But if they could be quiet, if they could breed them to make them quiet peacocks, then you might be onto something.
But someone's been poisoning them, right? Is that
one's been poisoned.
Just one. Well, why is the headline, who is the Cumbrian Peacock Poisoner?
Two have been hit by a car. Who's the bad driver would be a better headline.
I like the idea of the Cumbrian Peacock Poisoner. It sounds like a really bad Channel 5 film.
How do you miss a peacock in a car? They're huge. They fan the tail out. How do you manage to not see that on the road?
Well, you do it if it's... Well, that means it's deliberate. Clearly, if you're hitting a peacock in a car, it means you're deliberately...
Yeah, but the tail might have been closed, because it depends if they were trying to attract any mates or not, right?
Well, if you drive an attractive car, they won't do that.
That's all we've got time for. Much as I was enjoying the Peacock chat, show isn't almost over. Let's have another quick look at Sunday's front pages. We've got the Mail on Sunday running with, did Putin bribe coup leader to quit Russia? The Sunday Telegraph has Wagner mutineers turn back after striking deal with Putin. Express, they're going with the Russia story as well. Russia on the brink. The Sunday Mirror has Putin pushed to the brink. And the Sunday Times, Putin humiliated by mutiny. The Daily Star also running with the Russia story with Putin the Bootin. They've taken the pun there. Those were the front pages. That is all we've got time for. Thanks to my guests. We're back tomorrow at 11 o'clock with Leo and Paul and Victor Daniels. And if you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for breakfast.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel. Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, lovely people. Welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Coming up on the show this evening, we'll be joined by Liam Halligan to talk about the real damage the COVID pandemic lockdown had on the economy and what we might expect in the days, months and years ahead. We'll also be talking to Michael Kill, the CEO of the Nighttime Industries Associations, who'll tell us about how the hospitality industry is still struggling. No surprises there. And we'll also be hearing about some rare and very beautiful maps detailing the defeat of the Spanish Armada, which are set to go on public display for the very first time. All of that, plus plenty of chat with my brilliant and lovely panellist, Tonya Buxton, But first, an update on the latest news from Rory Smith.
Thank you very much, Neil. Russian paramilitary group Wagner is continuing advances towards Moscow. The group's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, accuses Russia's military chiefs of lying to justify the war in Ukraine. He claims Russian helicopters have already opened fire on them as they make their way towards the capital. Moscow's mayor says a counter-terrorism regime has been declared in the city, admitting the situation there is difficult. The UK government has held an emergency Cobra meeting and the Prime Minister is in touch with allies. President Putin accuses Prigozhin of treason and armed mutiny.
Any internal turmoil is a mortal threat to our statehood, to us as a nation. This is a blow to Russia, to our people. Our actions to protect the homeland from such a threat will be harsh. All those who deliberately took the path of betrayal, who prepared an armed mutiny, who took the path of blackmail and terrorist methods, will suffer an inevitable punishment, will answer both to the law and to our people.
Well, former UK ambassador to Russia, Sir Tony Brenton, told GB News what could be a possible outcome.
He's not got that many forces. He's got perhaps 10 or 20,000 men, but they are battle-hardened. They have been effective, as I've said, in Ukraine. Prigozhin himself has a lot of resonance, at least in right-wing circles in Russia. So there will be people who will be wishing him well in this project. I frankly suspect he's not going to make it, and there are already stories of him being attacked. But this could be the beginning of civil war in Russia and indeed of Putin's fall.
Well, we spoke to a Russian journalist, Alexei Weir, who's in Red Square in central Moscow. He told us how people there feel about the situation.
There is no panic, but as you've said, the counter-terrorist operation regime has been declared, so there is extra law enforcement on the streets of Moscow, and it's an atmosphere of a tense anticipation, I would say. There is no panic, but it's pretty tense in the Russian capital right now.
In other news this evening, a safety investigation is being carried out on the ship that launched the Titan submersible into the ocean. If you're watching on television, you can now see live pictures of St John's Harbour. That's where the Polar Prince arrived earlier today. Police and safety investigators are currently on board. 5 people were killed in the incident. The First Minister of Scotland says the next Westminster election should be used as a manifesto for an independent Scotland. Speaking at an SNP independence convention in Dundee, Humza Yousaf said that the route to Scottish independence is through the lawful and democratic process. Yousaf added that if the SNP wins that election, it will seek negotiations with the UK government to give democratic effect to Scotland becoming independent. A major water company is blaming more people working from home after the COVID pandemic for a new hosepipe ban. South East Water, which supplies more than 2 million homes and businesses, will impose the first hosepipe ban of the summer from Monday, affecting households across Kent and Sussex. Well, the company's chief executive also blamed low rainfall, as well as a recent spell of hot weather leading to a spike in demand for drinking water. The Prime Minister has paid tribute to the phenomenal precision and professionalism of British troops as events are held across the UK to mark Armed Forces Day. The King also thanked military personnel for the immense and dedicated contribution of the British military, both at home and overseas. He drew on his own time in the military, saying he recognised the deep pride service personnel take in their duty. People in Manchester told us what today means to them.
One of these things that should be recognised. The army should be recognised, the veterans should be recognised. There's, you go to America and they're recognised. Here, they're sort of like brushed under the carpet, and it's all wrong.
It's to show my support for the veterans, the injured veterans and the cadets who hopefully, and they're our future, all being well.
Show your respects like in that, there's a lot of colleagues and that who aren't here today, who would like to be here, but for the guys who are serving now and the girls, so yeah, we still need our armed forces, and just for be part of that, So we're proud of.
TV online.